Listening to CBS Sports Radio. Your all sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Strong opinions. Your phone calls expected here. CBS Sports Radio.
Your Armchair Quarterbacks on YouTube Live. SEC, ACC, and Big Ten coverage like no other. Subscribe and like us today. Your first choice for sports talk live from the First Coast.
Hey, Jacksonville, winter is the perfect time to start planning for your healthy, pest-free spring lawn with True Green, America's #1 lawn care company. True Green's science-based approach and local expertise will help give your lawn the year-round care it needs to be thick and weed-free. Go to truegreen.com/radio to save 50% on your first service. Just call 866-946-5956 or go to truegreen.com/radio today and get a lawn to be proud of.
Get your Sunday football morning started off right with the Handicappers on Armchair Quarterbacks YouTube, 10 a.m. Eastern to noon Eastern. Your Sunday morning kickoff show where we tackle your NFL lines out in the desert, a 61.2% win rate over the last 6 years. Against the spread, over, under, money line, you name it. And we dive into the world of fantasy football year long and your DFS payouts. your only true Southern football kickoff show that talks the spreads in Vegas, your DFS and fantasy, and your year-long quest to win that fantasy football championship. Only on the Armchair Quarterbacks YouTube channel. It's the Handicappers on Armchair Quarterbacks YouTube, 10 a.m. Eastern to noon Eastern. Sundays, all NFL season long.
At Jewelers Mutual, we're a little obsessed with jewelry. Obsessed like auctioneers with talking fast.
50, we're going to hit
Pop stars with auto-tune. And dentists with asking questions.
So, how did he propose?
After they've put their hands in your mouth.
Great.
Yes, we've made jewelry our obsession for over 100 years. We love it so much, we named our kids Ruby, Amber, and Opal.
Venti soy latte for Opal?
At Jewelers Mutual, we insure jewelry and only jewelry, which is why people who are also obsessed with jewelry trust us with theirs.
Saturday mornings, 8:30 Eastern. Dixie Football Nation is back and better than ever. We've got Tony Agolini, Matt Carr, Tones Ariola, Bobby and Angelo, along with Mac McGee this fall. Dixie Football Nation heads to the gridiron, talking ACC, SEC, the Big Ten, and all the big games throughout the college football land. That's Dixie Football Nation, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central, Saturday mornings on the Armchair Quarterback Show's YouTube channel, going live. Or catch the instant replay.
Take the road less traveled in the newly redesigned Hyundai Santa Fe. With available H-Track all-wheel drive to help you get off the beaten path a little further together. And intuitive safety features that can help you see what's waiting around the bend. Plus, with generous room for 5 and comfortable available Napa leather seating, you can go for more drives as a family without driving each other crazy. Find new adventures together in the Hyundai Santa Fe.
I'm Amy Lawrence, and I'm up late, always, after hours, hanging out with you on CBS Sports Radio. Check it out, 2 a.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Pacific.
Me out to the ball game. Get caught up with the big stories from around the world in sports in just a few minutes. Take Me Out to the Ball Game today, weekdays. Armchair Quarterbacks on YouTube. Baseball, football, basketball, whatever's trending in the world of sports, it's on Take Me Out to the Ball Game today in just a few minutes. It drops weekdays, 9:30 a.m. Eastern, as Wake Up Y'all is ending. Take Me Out to the Ball Game today on the Armchair Quarterbacks YouTube channel. Take me out to the ball game. The Armchair Quarterbacks on YouTube Live, covering the AFC South and NFC South along with the rest of the NFL. Subscribe and like us today. Your first choice for sports talk live from the First Coast.
CBS Sports Radio, your home for all things sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, coast to coast. Great sports talk expected here. CBS Sports Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the ground. Good evening and welcome to the sports page as we take you out to the ball game here on January 3rd, 2022. Let's get it out of the way. It's what all the pundits have been talking about all day long. In shock that Antonio Brown lost his marbles and his clothing and ran out of the stadium. It's really more humorous than anything else. And people want to sit here and try to cite the CTEs and all this kind of stuff. Chris Rock said it best years ago. Whatever happened to just plain crazy? The dude is nuts. He's been nuts the whole time through. And the reasoning for all this is because he threw a temper tantrum on the sideline, and they basically told him to get it together. He didn't want to get it together, and he took off. Now, here's the funny thing. I am seeing so many apologists coming to the aid of Antonio Brown and saying that he was being forced into play when he was injured, blah, blah, blah. No way in hell any of that's true. That was reported from, what was it called? 3-point something. I forget what they call it, 3-point conversion or whatever. That's a false report. You pay attention to all the reporters that were there, from ESPN to the NFL reporters, to the television reporters, the ones outside the locker room, the ones in the New York City area. That story's a lie. Now, you might want to believe it, and that's why you'll spin it that way, but that story is a flat out lie. So Antonio Brown lost his marbles, threw his clothes. What is really interesting about the whole situation is the bonuses that he's going to miss when he was so close to hitting all of them. And it's downright humorous when you think about the fact that this guy, who has just been given an absolute insane amount of talent, pisses it away once again. And I'm going to read it off to you, but this is what cost Antonio Brown. When he pulled his clothes off and stormed out and threw his tantrum, let me see if I can find it real quick. There was a whole list of stuff that he was. Here it is. If he gets 8 more catches, which he would have gotten, he would have gotten a handful more this week, and you know he would have gotten it next week. They would have made sure that he got the bonus. $333,000. So $1/3 He needed 55 yards receiving to unlock another 33.5. Or excuse me, $333,000. And then he also needed 1 touchdown. All in all, it's going to cost him about $1 million because he could not keep it together. There's reports that when it was going on that he made some kind of comment about how this is really going to help my Netflix deal. I guess he's going to get some kind of a reality show. Whether or not this is going to help or hurt his reality show, I don't know. I do know this. He would have made a hell of a lot more money in the National Football League than his flop of his reality show. Have you ever listened to AB? Have you ever listened to him talk? You're going to get really bored really fast. He has nothing to say. And when he's off his meds, off his rocker, I think he's dangerous to himself. He's not going to do it, but I think he needs to go out and get help. Check himself in somewhere. He's not going to do it. And someone will enable him next year. Someone will do it. They'll think that they can calm him down, that they can get him together. Here is a list of the stuff that he did over the last few years. Steelers deactivated him before week 17 after throwing a temper tantrum at the team practice. Remember that? And that led to the Steelers getting rid of him and trading him to the Raiders March in 2019. By July of 2019, he was put on, so just a few months there, he was put on non-football injury list, frostbite from cryotherapy. You remember that nutso thing? Then in August of that year, missed Raiders training camp practices due to helmet grievances. Was released by the Raiders after Instagram posts asking for his release. Remember that? Then he signs a 1-year, $15 million deal with the Patriots. Remember, he was celebrating all on social media. A week later, former trainer Brittany Taylor accuses him of sexual assault. Then he's released by the Patriots. So he signs with the Patriots on September 9th. By September 20th, 11 days later, he gone. January 22nd, Brown is charged with felony burglary and battery, 2 misdemeanors with a moving truck company. He pled no contest. They didn't give him any jail time. And once again, it is a privileged athlete that does not have to pay the consequences. Later on that year in July, Brown is suspended 8 games for multiple violations of personal conduct. And this is when all the information came out about he had sexual advances, battery, whatever you want to call it, on his trainer, supposed to be his friend. And they ended up working things out of the courts. She got paid handsomely. But then he goes and he signs a 1-year deal with the Bucks. So he has his suspension, signs the 1-year deal with the Bucks. It effectively took place in October. And then he catches 5 passes, including a touchdown in the Super Bowl with the Bucks, and everything's hunky-dory. Bucks fans are enabling him, patting him on the back, et cetera, et cetera. And look, I like the Bucks. I've followed them my whole life living down here in Florida. But you got to admit when you're saying, anything for a win, right? Sometimes you got to look in the mirror. And so then later on, suspended for 3 games this season with the fake vaccination card. So he goes through the suspension after lying about his vaccination. And now he pulls his equipment off, runs out of the stadium, and it's all ESPN has splattered all over their screen all day long. I'm sick of it, but I figured that we had to address it so we could move on, because it's a very, very strange story indeed. And that's that's what happens when you don't have any kind of consequences for it's not just Antonio Brown. There are other athletes that have done things. I'm not going to put it all at his feet, but this is what happens when these guys go their entire life and they're always just a little above everybody, right? Everybody's always just a little above them. And when it's all said and done, they don't have to answer to anybody. And they go through life and eventually it catches up to them. You know, I didn't even bring up the fact that it was a year or so before that little blow up at the Steelers. Remember when the Steelers clinched the playoff berth and Antonio Brown was in the locker room with his cell phone doing a Facebook Live, wanting to get all the attention? That right there should have been our first clue that this guy was always going to be out for number 1. And he's off. Like there's something not right with him. Tom Brady did all he could to go out and say, hey, man, why don't you come out here and why don't you play with us? We'll show you the right way. We'll get you the wins. You got him a ring. We could change your career on. He could have changed his entire narrative of his career if he would have went out there and done it the right way for the next few years with Tom Brady. He'd be waltzing into the Hall of Fame with at least one more Super Bowl victory. I think the Bucs get at least one more, whether it's this year or next year. Instead, anyways, we move on. I don't want to talk about Antonio Brown all day long, but I do feel like it had to be addressed. All right. So we'll be doing this on Mondays. Going to do it live. If you want to watch it live, subscribe to our YouTube page. I am going to start putting these on Facebook, but they're going to be recorded. If you want to do it live, come to YouTube. There's a long story why we can't do it both at the same time on both YouTube and Facebook, but that's where it'll be live on YouTube. Facebook, we will do reruns. All right. Second thing up on the docket, NFL MVP. And I think Joe Burrow put his name in the ring. I really do. I think Joe Burrow has put his name into the ring for NFL MVP. Now, I think most people are going to vote for Aaron Rodgers. Me personally, I would vote for Jonathan Taylor. Nothing against what Aaron Rodgers has done, but it's kind of second hat. These quarterbacks, you can't give it to a quarterback every year. When you have a running back doing what running backs do, out of the ordinary, like what Jonathan Taylor did, I think it is high time that a Jonathan Taylor gets it. Look, Derrick Henry should have got the MVP a couple of years ago. You got to start giving it to the running backs. It can't just become a quarterback award. If that's the case, then let's just rename it to quarterback of the year and move on. But the most valuable player, you think the Colts are anywhere near the playoffs without Jonathan Taylor? No way. Carson Wentz isn't going down the damn field and lighting up the scoreboard by himself. He's got to have Jonathan Taylor. I get that you can make that same argument for Aaron Rodgers, for Tom Brady, for almost any quarterback, because it is a quarterback-driven league. But when a running back has this kind of numbers, he's legit. Joe Burrow, to me, put his hat in the ring. To have those two back-to-back games, beating Baltimore, which put them in the position to win the division, and then going on and beating Kansas City yesterday, which clinched the division. I mean, he slayed the dragon. My man went out there and he slayed the dragon. He beat Patrick Mahomes when everyone thought Kansas City was getting on a roll to the point where they may be unbeatable. Excuse me. He slayed the dragon, and I at this point I'd have Jonathan Taylor 1 and Joe Burrow and Aaron Rodgers right behind them, tied for second. To be honest, it would be a flip of the coin. I get it that Burrow's had some games that he's probably not 100% proud of, so I get that part of it. But all in all, the man has shown the cojones to show up in the biggest of situations. Only Dak Prescott has had a larger two-game back-to-back combination of yards than what Joe Burrow did these last 2 weeks. Threw for over 900 yards over these last 2 weeks against the Baltimore Ravens and Kansas City Chiefs. Baltimore has a questionable pass defense. I get that. But they're still pretty hard-hitting defense. Kansas City, that defense have been playing really well. I mean, really well. And I don't think that should be slept on by any shape or form. So we're going now to a situation when we hit the NFL MVP. And I know it's not as doesn't get as much fanfare as the Heisman and maybe some of your other MVP awards, but I think the NFL MVP should be celebrated a little more. And I really think it should be celebrated for not just quarterbacks. I really think that running backs should get in the mix. Wide receivers, hell, none this year jump out at me, but I'll tell you what Jamar Chase has done this year, that dude doesn't get rookie of the year. Whew. I was ready to give it to Waddle, but what Jamar Chase did yesterday, clinching the division, that is an absolute barn-burning situation where you have a guy go out, catch 11 passes, 266 yards, and came up in a big, big way. There's a breaking news, by the way, that Oklahoma quarterback Caleb Williams is entering the transfer portal. That's interesting. I guess that has to do with the fact he lost his coach and he doesn't want to play in Oklahoma if his coach isn't going to be there. I can't hate him for it. I do find it odd because I do believe job was his, but remember Oklahoma went out and got in the recruiting process. They went out and got the kid from, I believe it was Texas, that was looked upon as the number one recruit. He ended up changing his mind, went to USC, but Oklahoma was getting other guys coming in at quarterback, and maybe Williams just wants a brand new start. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that, but we will keep our eye on that. All right, other things going on in the NFL. First of all, tonight's game, the Steelers, they are still alive. They are still alive. And you look at the scenarios that are going on in the NFL as of right now. I'm going to pull them up here in a second. But what we have here is these are the teams that are still alive as we speak, okay? And first of all, the Titans have clinched the AFC South with the win yesterday. They also sit at the 1 seed. The Chiefs have clinched the West. The Bengals have clinched the North in the AFC. The only division still up for grabs, Bills, Patriots. Bills clinch with a win or a Patriots loss. Patriots need a win and a Bills tie or loss. Still alive in the AFC. Colts, Chargers, Raiders, Ravens, Steelers. In the NFC, the Packers have clinched a 1 seed. The Rams have clinched a playoff berth, but they have not clinched the division yet. Bucks have the South. Cowboys have the East. Cardinals and Eagles both have clinched a playoff berth. But the seeding is still a live scenario. Still alive in the NFC on the outside looking in. You have the 49ers and Saints essentially fighting out for that final wild card. So we'll talk about the wins here in a second, but still alive in the AFC: Colts, Chargers, Ravens, Raiders, Ravens, and Steelers. So with all that being said, as crazy as it sounds, and I have to admit it's a little out there. It's hard to believe, but the Pittsburgh Steelers, as bad as they've been all year, they are still in the playoff race. Now they have to win tonight. There is no two ways around it. The Pittsburgh Steelers have to win tonight. They're playing Cleveland. We're going to get into that game here in 1 second. But the Steelers, if they lose tonight, it's a wrap. But if they win tonight, they have a chance to still be in the conversation on the last weekend. I do believe this has been Roethlisberger's last year in Cleveland. In Pittsburgh. I also don't believe that he'll play elsewhere. I don't think Roethlisberger has lost a step. He lost a step 2 years ago. He played last year, and I think he was coming out one more year to see if he can push that sun back up into the sky just one more year. It didn't work. Tonight, the game is in Pittsburgh. They're a 3-point favorite. The over-under is 43.5. When you talk about this game and you talk about the implications of this game, and we'll get into some player props here in a second as well, but it's pretty interesting to see that the spread is just 3 points. I think you're going to get a really low scoring game. I think you're going to get a game where each team's going to kind of try to feel each other out. The Browns are out of it, but you know what the Browns still have on their side? The Browns want to ruin the Steelers' season. It's almost like a playoff win if you can go in there and beat the Steelers, because next week's game against the Bengals means nothing to Cincinnati, essentially. So this has become Cleveland's bowl game, essentially. And they're going to go in with the opportunity to upset the Steelers and end their season. The way that rivalry goes, don't sleep on that. Now, remember, the Steelers beat Cleveland in Cleveland earlier this year, 15-10. And when we take a look at that game and all that went on, Nick Chubb had an okay day, but not a great day, 16 carries for 61 yards. But they were playing much better run defense back then. Pittsburgh had some injuries, and their run defense has been terrible. Najee Harris had a really good game versus Cleveland, by the way, 91 yards and a touchdown for you fantasy people. Where the rubber met the road in this game, Cleveland just never got the ball going. Mayfield didn't even turn the ball over, but it was a slow, methodical, grinded out kind of game. I watched most of that game, and the Steelers just outlasted them like they tend to do in this series. Steelers are going to have to put their nose to the grindstone tonight, because if they get that W, this is what was going to happen if the Steelers can win tonight. All right, Pittsburgh fans, this is what you need. Let's say that they win and Pittsburgh goes to then 8-7-1. Realize one thing Pittsburgh's not going to have to worry about is tiebreakers because of that tie. They're not going to have to worry about that. But you look at the playoff standings right now, and in the AFC, what's up for stake at 8-7-1? Let's say the Steelers win their next two games. Next weekend, they are at the Ravens. And that's obviously another team that is in the playoff race. Ravens and Steelers should be a lot of fun. I'm a little surprised Ravens and Steelers wasn't one of the Saturday games. They chose Kansas City versus Denver, and they chose Dallas versus Philadelphia is the night game. Now we're planning on carrying the Denver game here, 4:30 kickoff. We're going to do play-by-play for those of y'all who don't have access to the game. But I'm a little surprised that Pittsburgh-Baltimore wasn't the game. I think it would have been a lot of fun to see Pittsburgh-Baltimore. The Denver-Kansas City game is really just about home field advantage. If Denver wins, they put pressure on Tennessee to win, and then Tennessee would have to beat the Texans the next day. But Baltimore versus Pittsburgh, if Pittsburgh wins, this is what you're looking at. Okay. You've got essentially let's say the Steelers went out, they'll be 9-7-1. They're going to have to get a lot of help. Right now, 5 teams. The 3 division winners, Titans, Chiefs, and Bengals are all in. The Bills and Patriots are in. That's 5 teams. Outside of that, you've got the Colts, you've got the Chargers, and you got the Raiders. Winner of Raiders Chargers is going to the playoffs. And they have pushed that to the Sunday night game. That makes a lot of sense. The Colts are going to play the Jaguars. Let's just assume that the Colts are going to win that game. You get the Colts in, and you get the winner of the Chargers Raiders in. That's going to leave Pittsburgh on the outside looking in. Pittsburgh has to win the next 2 games, and then the big thing is they got to get the Jaguars to beat the Colts. That's not going to be an easy task. I'm not going to tell you that it is. Essentially, what I think is going to happen is you're going to have the 5 teams that I mentioned that have clinched. I think the Colts are going to beat the Jaguars. And then I think you're going to get a hell of a game. Los Angeles versus Las Vegas, the Raiders versus Chargers. Great rivalry. It's going to be in Vegas, and that winner goes to the playoffs. NFC. It's a little more clear. You've got the Packers, or the 1 seed, Bucks and Cowboys are in. The Rams and the Cardinals are in, but the Rams have not clinched the division yet. They're 12-4. Arizona's 11-5. Right now, if the Rams win, they're the 2 seed. They get the tiebreaker because they beat Tampa. Right now, Tampa doesn't have a whole hell of a lot to play for, because even if they lose, Dallas is not going to jump over them, because Tampa is going to have that tiebreaker, because remember, Tampa beat them at the very first game of the year. So in the NFC, what you have is this. You have the 49ers at 9-7. You have the Saints at 8-8. If Philly, it doesn't matter what Philly does. Philly's in the playoffs. But I'm a little confused by that, because San Francisco, they play the Rams. All right, one thing I'm a little confused about is they're saying that the I'm not going to lie, this is taking me back a second. The Saints are 8-8. If they win, they're 9-8. And I see it now. They do not have the tiebreaker on Philly. So Philly's in. What San Francisco and the Saints are looking at is San Francisco leads the Saints by 1. If San Francisco loses and the Saints win, the Saints get in the playoffs. Any other scenario, the 49ers go to the playoffs. So there's not a lot of intrigue there for the NFC. And then as far as seeding goes, in the AFC, Titans win, they get the bye. Titans lose and Chiefs win, they get the bye. I don't believe there's any scenario where the Bengals would jump over the Chiefs and Titans to get the bye. So that's what you have, is those two going head to head for the bye. I also don't believe both of them would lose. I could see Tennessee losing. I don't think Kansas City loses again. So anyway, you shape that out. And as far as the division goes, the Bills and the Patriots are 10-6. If the Bills win, they get the division. If the Patriots win, they get the division. The way it looks right now, they're playing for home field advantage against each other, because the way it sets up right now, Bills and Patriots are set to play for a third time. Colts and Bengals, man, will that be a fun game? Colts and Bengals first round. And then if it ends this way, Chiefs would play the winner of the Chargers Raiders. That would be a lot of fun, because you get an AFC West situation going on there. All right, we move on from that. All the scenarios. We're going to get into fantasy football here in 1 second. I do want to talk about the college football playoffs real quick. So they're talking about expansion, and there's so many people pushing back on this. There's so many people saying, well, you don't have the expansion because the 2 semifinal games are so bad. What's the point? I think the point is to make them play more than 2 games. Don't give them a month. Quit giving these teams, Georgia, Alabama, a month to prepare. When you give the very elite teams a month to prepare against their foes, of course they're going to have a huge advantage. Why wouldn't they? Nick Saban, you give him a month to prepare? You give Nick Saban a week to prepare each week, it's a totally different situation. So if you go to an 18 playoff, you'd have to play 3 games. And I think what they would do is they would set it up as the first game would probably take place the week before Christmas Eve. Right? Because you don't want to put it during that time period. There's too many traditions that they get put in there. So you would give the winner, looking at the college championships, we're talking about, we'll say the first week of December, they would probably play the first round somewhere around the second week of December. Now, you may not put it on the Saturday of Army Navy. You may stretch it out a little bit. Maybe you go see this past year, if memory serves me correct, on the playoffs, as I pull my calendar up, I got this soundboard in my way. This year, if you look at the playoff scenario, we had conference championship Saturday, on December 4th. Army Navy was on the 11th. It would have played out perfectly. You put the first playoff on the 18th, and then you would take the week of Christmas off, and you play the next one on what would have been the first. They should have put the playoffs on New Year's Day anyways. And then the championship game would be the Monday of, this year, what is the date of it? It's I think it's the 10th, somewhere in that neighborhood. But yeah, to me, that's the perfect scenario, because we're going to get the college football playoff. Let me double check that. But you would basically have 2 weeks in between if you only did 8 teams. And I think 8 teams, look, I've been a proponent of 7, because I'd like to have the bye week. I'd like to have the team get the motivation. But I also get, you want that extra game, you want that extra money. And why give Nick Saban 3-4 weeks to get ready for a game? So I absolutely think that it is time. You can't keep doing it the way you're doing it. You keep playing these college football playoffs with the month off in between the games, and we get terrible, and I mean terrible, semifinals. And it's not just because you've got SEC versus whatever. Because look, Clemson has embarrassed teams. It's because the very elite teams, you give them a month off, man, it's a wrap. Yeah, Monday, January 10th is the playoff. So yeah. You could have done that this year and everything would have been fine. As far as the college football national championship, I'll give my thoughts on that next week. Right now, the line is pretty interesting to me. The line is sitting at -3 Georgia. I'm a little shocked that Alabama is not the favorite. Did we not just watch Alabama kick the crap out of Georgia? Now, I guess the theory is it's hard to beat a team twice. If you like Alabama, you better grab that fast. That line's going to go down. There's going to be so much money coming in on Alabama. There's no way they don't put money on Alabama. By the way, there is a bowl game tomorrow night. LSU getting 7 points against Kansas State. LSU loses that game. SEC's had a terrible bowl. You take Alabama and Georgia out of the mix, and I know that's the most important because it's the playoffs, but you take it out of the mix, the SEC has had a terrible bowl season. Terrible. Loss after loss. Not that I think any of that matters. I always try to compartmentalize and say team versus team, not conference versus conference. But you always hear the people chanting SEC, SEC, SEC. They've had a terrible, terrible season. It really just goes to show what most of us already know. The SEC is extremely top heavy. So, it's not that you have, this is the best conference in football. No, it's Alabama's the best program in football. And Georgia's pretty damn good. But I don't think they should be favored. Even if they win the game, they shouldn't be favored. That's nuts. One last thing, fantasy football. We're going to do more on this down the road. We're going to hit some Dynasty. I'll start it next week. I didn't have enough time to prepare. Plus, I kind of want to see what we hit at the end of this season, make sure there's not a major injury. So we'll do it next Monday, but we're going to go position by position and we're going to hit dynasty rankings, where these guys really should be ranked. Quarterbacks, the running backs, the receivers, the tight ends. We'll do them all throughout the playoff season. And then, of course, we'll also talk the playoffs. I'm going to get out of here. This went a little longer than I expected to do it, but kind of got thrown off by a couple of things when we first came on. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Hope you tune in. And we'll be back next Monday. Remember, Fridays, we're on at 5:00, but I'm here with the whole gang. And we are planning on doing play-by-play on Saturday. So we shall see. I don't think I'm going to do another one before Friday, but just like and subscribe if something pops up, something major pops up in sports. Absolutely going to. With no baseball to talk about because of the lockout, it's a little bland right now. So we shall see you and enjoy the Monday Night Football game tonight.
Take me out to the ball game.